Welcome back inside the den. Excited to be back. Chris, game week.
Yeah, big game against USC. We'll see how Nevada does against the number 6 team in the country. I think we saw in USC's first game some vulnerabilities on defense against San Jose State. They gave up 28 points, almost 200 yards rushing, I think right around 25 first downs. So we'll see if Nevada can do similar damage to USC's defense as we saw San Jose State do last week.
Yes, San Jose State covered the spread with a touchdown with 5 minutes left. So good on them. They were 31-point dogs. We are currently 38 dogs. Is that correct?
38-point dogs for Nevada, yep, which is the largest underdog spread in the Wolfpack's history as far as I can tell. So the biggest underdog they've ever been going into a game. We'll see if they can stay within those 38 points.
So if you're a gambling man, would you
I'll give out my 3 keys and prediction at the end of the week. I always do that on Friday. So
Okay.
everyone tries to get it a little bit early.
Yeah.
They don't get it early.
No, we got to wait.
Yeah, you got to wait.
Including me.
Well,
so.
it takes me a while to actually get to the point where I get to look at Nevada's opponent. There's a lot of work early in my week, and then usually on Wednesday or Thursday I'll actually be able to dig in on the opponent. So I know a pretty good amount about USC, but I don't usually feel comfortable giving out a prediction until I've done that process of research, so I haven't quite got there yet. So
how much does Caleb Williams, Russell Wilson impersonations factor in these these predictions coming up?
I don't understand the Russell Wilson
okay, there's a play last weekend where there was a botched shotgun snap, and the ball was on the field, and he basically goes back, does this crazy play where he gets up and the lineman is in his face, and he does this kind of jumpy pass, and it's to a receiver 40, 50 yards downfield.
Oh, okay.
And it just everyone on Twitter was saying this
that's
looks
like Russell
prime
Wilson.
Russ.
Oh, I thought you were talking about just corny social media videos. That's what I know Russ for.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know him like that.
Or just a terrible quarterback play, which is what we saw last year from him. But yeah, no, Caleb Williams is a very good quarterback. So I think that's going to be Nevada's biggest challenge in this game is can you slow down the reigning Heisman Trophy winner?
We'll see. We'll get to that in our defensive episode. Today we are doing an offensive overview of Nevada. Naturally, kind of talking about Caleb Williams, we'll talk about the Nevada quarterbacks. And Brendan Lewis was named the starter. Mm-hmm. What does he bring to Nevada?
Well, I thought it was interesting Nevada actually named a starting quarterback. That's not something they did last year under Ken Wilson. Ken Wilson was actually pretty hush-hush in his press conferences every Monday. I think he was a lot more open yesterday when we got to talk to him, and I think that's a result of feeling a little bit more comfortable with this roster, not in terms only of its quality, but in terms of actually knowing all of the players a lot better because he's been around them an additional year. Obviously, Brendan Lewis, a little bit younger to this program, committed to Nevada right around Christmas of last year, so he was here spring camp, he was here fall camp, entered as the number 1 in fall camp and did nothing during fall camp to lose that job. So, started 13 games at Colorado, so he's got some Pac-12 experience. He's played at the Coliseum before. I think his dual threat ability is something that will really help this team because Nevada's offensive line has some question marks. So for him to be able to, as Coach Wilson said, make the offensive line right when they're wrong, when they miss a block or when they have an issue, have him be able to use his legs and make it a positive gain, I think is going to be huge. I think he's a pretty solid passer. I think that's the area he needs to develop the most is getting the ball down the field. But yeah, I think when you look at the total package plus experience plus leadership, named one of 2 captains on the team on the offensive side of the ball from his teammates, I think that's what made Brendan Lewis the starter. I also thought it was interesting that A.J. Bianco actually earned the number 2 role. So he's the backup. He's just a redshirt freshman quarterback. Shane Illingworth, who started 5 games last season for Nevada, now the 3rd string. So that shows you how much they've elevated the quarterback position just from last year to this year.
It's an elevated position room. Shane obviously started last year. And you look at these different skill sets within the quarterback room. Brendan Lewis is the ultimate hybrid of it all. He can run, he could pass, which ultimately got him the job. A.J. Bianco, I like his game. He's a little more of a, a pocket passer, but he has shown that mobility. We've seen that in spring camp and in portions of fall camp. And Shane is I don't want to call him a statue because that sounds mean, but if it was the 2000s, quarterback coaches would be drooling over him because he just sits in the pocket and just chucks it deep. But a solid position room that recently lost Nate
Costa.
Costa,
Yeah,
correct.
quarterbacks coach. So Derek
Yeah.
Sage, the offensive coordinator, will be working with the quarterbacks. Coach Wilson did say yesterday at his press conference that he thinks that could be beneficial for the offense. Typically, your offensive coordinator is also your quarterback's coach in terms of getting them the game plan and making sure everybody's on the same page. Coach Sage was previously working with tight ends, so we'll see exactly how that pans out. And actually, Coach Costa, when I talked to him after he did resign last week, said that he thinks this will be beneficial for Coach Sage in terms of being able to get his hands on the offense completely. And to do that, you really need to be able to meet with your quarterbacks on a day in, day out basis. And he'll be able to do that. Obviously, Virgil Green, former Nevada football player, Super Bowl winner with Denver Broncos, elevated to tight ends coach. He was the player development coach. So he'll have a full-time role, and we'll see how he does in his first time as an assistant coach.
And those tight ends will be blocking for those running backs. Starter, we got the depth chart. I'm pretty sure Sean Dollars is at the top.
Yep.
What does he bring to Nevada?
So the actual depth chart says Sean Dollars or Ashton Hayes. This is one of two ors on the depth chart, but Coach Wilson did say that Sean Dollars will take the field first. He's a transfer from Oregon. He's got some decent experience. You look at Ashton Hayes, a transfer from Cal. I think they'll more or less split carries. Coach Wilson did say Jamal Bell, who's actually a wide receiver, slot wide receiver, could also get some carries at running back. I think there's a lot of explosiveness from this running back room. I think the biggest question is who's going to get you those yards between the tackles. The majority of the guys, the three that we just mentioned, all more like all-purpose backs, more like scat backs, not necessarily your big bulking backs that are going to, be able to get you the tough yards. Not to say that they can't do that, but that's not necessarily their MO or why they were recruited to their respective schools. So I think you'll probably see Sean Dollars get about 50% of the carries, Ashton Hayes about 40%, maybe 10% to the other guys, Wesley Comer, Cross Patton, maybe Jamal Bell gets back there, as we had mentioned. So, I think if Nevada can open some holes for these guys, I think they can get a lot of yards. The question is, if they're not getting a lot of holes opened, do they have kind of the physicality to go and get yards that aren't being blocked for? And I think that's the thing to watch for throughout this season.
You got to watch that. But ultimately, how this running back room is designed, it appears that they're going to be used out of the backfield as receiving options. And, with the option of Bell coming in the backfield, that even speaks more to it. So expect a lot of passes to the running backs this year. I know we saw it a lot last year with the Nevada offense. And that was due to an offensive line that couldn't protect up front and receivers that weren't getting open downfield, so they had to do a lot of checkdowns. But this year you'll probably see more, screens, more, running backs get out to the flat and just getting them out in space and letting the playmakers, do what they do in the open field. And they have those guys, and Ashton Hayes, a Sean Dollars, and potentially a Cross Patton. So it'll be interesting to see what that room. And we're talking about receiving. Got a bridge to the receivers. Solid group.
Not a big surprise in terms of the listed starters. You have Delvon Campbell, you have Jamal Bell, and you have Spencer Curtis. So those were Nevada's three primary starters last year, along with B.J. Castillo, who's no longer with the program. So not a big surprise there. I think Delvon Campbell, 6'4", transfer from Illinois last year, had right around 40 catches, about 13, 14 yards per reception. I think he has the highest ceiling of those three. I think he could be potentially an all-Mountain West player. I think he's a very, very talented kid. Obviously, he's got great size. He's got great speed as well. Coach Mason Baggett, who is the strength and conditioning coach, said that both him and Jamal Bell have tracked the fastest during practice in terms of top-end speed. So if you're 6'4" and you're also the fastest player on the team, that's usually really good. So I would look out for him. Jamal Bell, Spencer Curtis, smaller guys. We'll see how they develop. I think they'll be nice role players. And then John Jackson III, Isaiah Crocker, they're two transfers from the Pac-12 in their sixth year of college. They're listed as backups. And also Marshawn Brown listed as backup. Bishop Minogue High graduate. He's a true freshman, one of three true freshmen who made the two deep on the offensive side of the ball, the other two offensive linemen. So you should expect to see Marshawn Brown quite a bit as a true freshman. He should probably burn his freshman year, play more than 4 games. That's the projection at this point. So he's done really well in fall camp to be able to get that recognition. But I do think wide receiver is a fairly large question mark for this team. They don't really have anybody that you feel you need to double team, play in and play out. They don't have your Romeo Dobbses, your Nate Burlesons, your Rashard Matthews, Trevor Inslees, Jeff Noiseys, guys who can really go out and dominate a game on paper. I think Delvon Campbell may potentially become that guy. But if Nevada's passing game, which was very poor last year, bottom 10 in the country in terms of pass efficiency, is going to take a big step forward, those wide receivers are certainly going to have to play better.
They have to. But you mentioned it, Delvon, just his ceiling is there. I mean, you're 6'4", you run the fastest on the team. There's obviously he's going to have to improve upon any type of route running he does, but certainly that size and speed makeup is unique in college football. So we'll see if it translates to success for him on the field. But again, this needs to be a group that takes another step forward in order for this offense to actually start putting up points, because they were very one-dimensional last year, and that extremely hampered them and towards the end of the season with their production.
I mean, you could call them zero-dimensional, actually, because they were not able to run the ball 3.3 yards per carry, and they were not able to throw the ball more interceptions and passing touchdowns.
That's
So
fair.
can they go from zero-dimensional to two-dimensional is the big question. I think that all starts with the run game, and that starts with the offensive line. If you can establish a run game, it's going to make your passing attack so much more potent, because now you can't completely, just sit there and say, okay, well, we're fine with our front. We don't have to dedicate more people to the run game, and you can play two deep safeties. You can really try and choke off the deep ball, and then you probably feel pretty comfortable last year with your cornerbacks against Nevada's wide receivers, and we'll see if that changes. I think the offense should be a lot better this upcoming season, but yeah, I would say zero-dimensional last year, and we'll see if there's progress there.
That's fair. I mean, you finished bottom end on the Mountain West on offense, so nowhere to go but up from here.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about some of the guys that'll be blocking next to these big hogs, the tight ends.
Tight ends, yeah, Kaleki Latu. I don't think his MO is necessarily the blocking aspect of being a tight end. He's 6'6", 215 pounds, so pretty slight. Came from Cal, 2 years with the Bears. Pretty solid season last year. I think he can be a very big weapon in this passing attack. I think Nevada's going to need him to be a big weapon in this passing attack. The Wolfpack has fought really hard to try and get a lot of tight ends onto this roster because it's a very tight end oriented scheme. Derek Sage, as we mentioned, was the tight ends coach and really wanted to get as many talented tight ends in terms of the blocking and the pass catching. They haven't necessarily gotten there yet. You look at the backup, Cameron Ziedler. He's a walk-on from North Valleys who was a true freshman last year. So you would like a little bit more depth at that position at this point. I know they've had some injuries as well. They had a couple of transfers, Jacob Monroe and Carlton Brown III. Both played a lot of reps last year and both transferred in the offseason. So they're still building that position, but I think you look at the top line, Kaleki Latu, I think this is a guy who does have all-conference potential if Nevada goes and utilizes him in the passing game. Now, he does have to improve as a blocker, but they did not get a lot from, through the air, through their tight ends last year. So I think he can have a really big season, and I think that would really help this offense.
And we mentioned that Virgil Green took over as tight end coach. He made his living in the pros as a blocking tight end. So
yes.
Maybe some knowledge you can pass down there, but Kalecki does have that frame to be a very competent catcher. And that's big, 6'7". That's tough for most college defensive backs or even linebackers to cover out in space. So we'll see if Kalecki goes into that mold of what Cole Turner was for this team under Norvell.
Yeah, big red zone target. I mean, I don't think he's going to get as many targets as Cole because they were playing in the air raid, but similar body type, I think similar athleticism, similar skill set. And we'll see if that red zone where Cole Turner was so fantastic during his last 2 years here, that back fade with Carson Strong was a very high percentage play. Nevada did not get in the red zone a ton last year, so we didn't really get to see exactly what they wanted to do when they got down there. But we talked about, can they get the hard yards in the run game with more all-purpose backs? If that becomes problematic and they have to throw the ball more in the red zone, can Kaleki Latu become a very big weapon down there and use that huge size to win 50-50 balls?
That's fair. And shout out Jaden O'Rourke, Aussie, coming his way to Reno to play tight end. So definitely uphill battle for him, but kind of another big guy, big frame that could potentially become like a Kaleki Latu in a few years.
They've got a lot of 6'6", 6'7" guys. I mean, you mentioned Jaden O'Rourke from Australia, who's a true freshman, so probably don't expect a ton from him in year one. Dyson Frank, who's a former basketball player in the Philadelphia area. They've raved about him since they signed him 2 classes ago. I was a little bit surprised he wasn't on the depth chart here. He did play a little bit toward the end of last year. We'll see if he can develop. But a lot of guys who are fairly new to this tight end position. Ziedler was a quarterback at North Valleys. As we said, Dyson Frank more of a basketball player, and then Jaden O'Rourke didn't pick up football until he was 16 years old, and he saw them playing in Hawaii when he was on a family vacation. So, there's going to be some growing pains for that group, and I think that's why Kaleki has to have a big season and stay healthy.
Definitely. And I recently spoke to Sage, and he was mentioning that room has experienced injuries more than any other room on the offense. So
Not ideal.
Not ideal. Not
Yeah.
going into the season. Certainly, they're not going to have heavy run formations. They don't even have 12 personnel. That's what he told me. So that tells me, a lot of passing coming out the gate. But I don't want to be like an old boomer here, but run the damn ball. And in that vein, let's talk about the Union.
Yeah, the offensive line is going to be huge. I guess we get started at the tackle positions. Isaiah World is going to be the starting left tackle on the depth chart, number one. That's no surprise. He started 10 games there last year. Those 10 starts, the most of any returning player on this offensive line. So that's not a high figure. Usually they'll have some guys in the high 20s or even 30s at this point. And then you look at the right tackle position. Frank Poso, who's in his 4th season at Nevada, has not yet emerged to earn a starting job, but he's a big kid, 6'5", 335 pounds. I actually thought you might see him more on the interior. So playing him on the edge will be interesting. He has lost some weight in the offseason, so maybe a little bit more agile and athletic against some of those great pass rushers that he's going to face. I think the left side of this line is going to be its strength with Isaiah World. He's another guy relatively new to football. He played 1 year of high school football, was actually recruited by Arizona State as a defensive player, committed there, was not able to see that through because there was a coaching change and some issues. So, I think he's going to probably be the best player on this line. But this is a big question mark. The offensive line, 37 career starts among the returning players. You look at center, I think that should be a strength. Andrew Madrigal started 8 games last year as a redshirt freshman, some at guard before moving to center. He was voted a team captain. So to be able to do that in just your 3rd season in a program, certainly there's a lot of respect that he's been able to earn. And then you look at the starting guards, Zach Welch on the left side. He's in his 5th year of college, so he's a fairly experienced player, got some starts last year. And then Josh Grabowski, that was the surprise to me at right guard. He played in only 2 games last year. He was a transfer from Modesto Junior College, first year at Nevada in 2022, 2 games. So there are some questions on that right side of the line. I think Kai Arneson is someone, Oregon transfer, who will probably get some meaningful reps. Jacob Nunez, a backup, Arizona State transfer. He was on the team the last couple of years. So they're still trying to sort through exactly what they're trying to do with the offensive line, but you do have Angus McClure, the offensive line coach, run game coordinator, back at Nevada for a first year. He's going to have to do a really good job with this group to get the Union to a higher level than we've seen the last couple seasons.
For sure. I mean, you mentioned Isaiah World. He has that build, long arms, super tall, exactly what you want out of a left tackle. The rest of the line is just, it's a question mark. But, if there's anybody that can steer him in the right direction, it's Angus McClure, seasoned offensive line coach that, brings all his years of experience and hopefully will steer Nevada in the right direction within their rushing offense, because you want to see that once they get down to the goal line. Obviously, you have your big dogs in Dale Vaughn and Kalecki that you could throw to, but preferably you'd want to see them run the ball in, and that's what sets good offenses apart from zero-dimensional offenses.
Yeah, I mean, you look at who Nevada lost on the offensive line this offseason. Grant Stark was their starting left tackle last year. He's now starting at Oregon State, which is a preseason top 25 team. He's actually playing guard. And then Aaron Frost, who was a preseason All-Mountain West player last year. He ended up tearing his ACL, transferred to Arizona State. He's their projected starter at right tackle. So you lost 2 starting caliber Pac-12 offensive linemen. If you had those 2 guys at left tackle and right tackle, and then you had Isaiah Worrell either backing them up or at guard, and you could move Frank Posa to guard, which is probably a little bit more comfortable position, the offensive line would be in a much better shape. So that's why there are so many concerns about this group. They've really been bad the last 2 years, 79 sacks allowed, 3.15 yards per carry, and then on top of that, they lost their 2 best players from the last couple of years. So there are some question marks there. We'll see how they grow throughout the season. But I think when you look at this offense and how it does overall, I think there's more optimism at quarterback with Brendan Lewis, somebody who played pretty well as a redshirt freshman at Colorado in 2021. You look at the running backs. These are both high 3-star or 4-star kids and Sean Dollars and Ashton Hayes. You look at the wide receivers. Like I said, I think Delvon Campbell can be a very, very good player in the Mountain West, and more depth there, more options there than you had last year. Kalecki Latu, he should be one of the better tight ends in the Mountain West. So from the skill position side, there have been some very big improvements. It's basically all former Pac-12 players. But as we know, those skill position players will only play as well as their offensive line allows them. So how can the Union play this upcoming season, there's not a lot of depth. Two of the backups listed are true freshmen, so they cannot suffer injuries this year. They really have to set the tone up front, and we'll see if they're able to do that from the start of the season to the end of the season, because this offense will go as that offensive line plays. And if you looked at all of the offensive line in the Mountain West, you'd probably rank Nevada toward the bottom, probably toward the bottom 2 or 3. That's, again, on paper. We'll see if they can go on the field and disprove some of those questions.
That's fair. Again, we don't know how these players are going to develop and how they make their second-year jumps, specifically World, young guy, but he has that capability to anchor down that. But a offensive line's best friend can be those backs and can be that mobile quarterback out of the backfield there. If you're doing options, you're taking one person out of the equation. So we'll see how much they utilize that. I know that was a big fixture in Oregon with Chip, so that definitely comes with Sage's background. So we'll see if the read option is a integral part, because it definitely helps the offensive line, because you're, again, negating one person on the play. So again, we'll see how they fare against USC on Saturday. But do you think they go like higher or lower than what San Jose put out at 28 points?
20. I'd probably say less than 28. But I think just overall, if you're looking at the season, Nevada averaged 18.8 points per game last season. That was third worst in the Mountain West. That was the second worst in Nevada's FBS history since 1992. So I think the question is not necessarily how they're going to fare against USC. I think a lot of teams are going to probably lose to USC by a lot of points. It's how will they fare over the entire season when they're playing Mountain West competition that should be very competitive against. What is an acceptable number of points per game for Nevada this upcoming season? After right around 19 last year, a lot of ill-timed turnovers. They had 5 turnovers that were returned for touchdowns in some very key games, 2 against Colorado State, 1 against Incarnate Word, 1 against UNLV. If those turnovers don't happen, Nevada probably wins all 3 of those games. They win 5 games. They're looking a lot better last season. I think if they can get to 25 points per game, that's a nice jump. That's 6 points. That's almost a full touchdown better. If they can hit that mark, that's nice progression on the offensive side of the ball, because I think if they really struggle again this year, Ken Wilson, who's a defensive-minded coach and really focuses on the defense, might look at his offensive staff and say, okay, are we trending in the right direction to continue this, or do we need to make some, significant changes to what we're doing on offense? So I think 25 points per game is probably the standard. You look at Nevada history, it's, above 30. So that's really the standard they're trying to get. But in the interim season between 19 and 30, can they get to 25? I think if they can hit that, I think that's probably satisfactory in terms of where they're trying to go offensively. How many points per game do you have Nevada scoring this year?
No, that's a fair assessment. I think, 25, 26 is around that realm. Last year they struggled so much, again, with turnovers and being zero-dimensional, as you said. But they should clean that up. It's another year in the system, more continuity. They have their guys in there, and it definitely will translate to more points. Again, ball security is everything, and last year we saw some poor play. Too many fumbles, too many. And, Nate Cox, good guy, but, too many, just untimely interceptions, which were, just first read, staring down a guy, and, people taking it the other way. Game that comes to mind, Colorado State, with that fumble return. That's that loses you games. So we'll see. But I think, there's nowhere to go but up, because we saw what rock bottom looked like with them last year with their offense, and they should definitely mark up at least a touchdown a game compared to last year.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. He's Chris. I'm Jared, and this is Inside the Den. Don't forget to rate, review, wherever you get this show. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.